Okay, and welcome to the CAS Study of Poetry 1900s to Present anthology for Robert Frost and Seamus Heaney. And today we are looking at Seamus Heaney's The Baler. Themes that this could possibly go under: nature, maybe possibly grief, contextual information that you need to know. This is obviously referring to the solid, repetitive sound of a vital piece of agricultural machinery, which unearths deep feelings of a convalescent recovering after ill health, Heaney. This poem explores mortality, the self, and a specific friend because it's in memoriam of the painter Derek Hill. So obviously that imbues it with quite a poignant quality as well. So let's look at the title, and from the title we can instantly see that this is going to be a rural poem. It's going to be about the machine that compresses hay into bales, and in this poem Heaney acknowledges the need for practical work, but he stresses the need in our own work to recognise the marvellous beauty that can be taken for granted, as we see in this beautiful pastoral scene. First stanza, you've got clunk of the baler, and you've got the onomatopoeic clunk, stressing the awakening of Heaney's senses. The fact that it takes place all day again suggests the rigorous hard work that is associated with rural work. The baler becomes a metaphor for your heart, and this is particularly interesting after we have learnt that Heaney's own health was failing and that he had had a stroke. Then you've got ongoing cardiac dull, and this lures us into taking for granted the beauty of the scene, this kind of rhythmic thrum of the baling machine. Yet in this landscape, the noise of the baler is Heaney's heartbeat, continuing the metaphor below with the tractor. Then we've got, it was evening before I came to what I was hearing. You can see that he's still feeling the effects of illness, and he is emerging from some sort of sleep, that reference to till it when I came to. And he hears familiar sounds from the farming calendar. There is vocabulary of consciousness and physical life, woven into the regular process as a reminder of Heaney's frailty, to what I was hearing and missing. This idea that with old age or illness, your senses become dulled. So hearing and missing is important. Summer's richest hours. So you've got the superlative and the fact that summer is personified as well, shows that this is an annual tradition and it's a seasonal metaphor for his younger years. The poet is drawn into the past. So summer's richest hours, the farming calendar, becomes a metaphor for his own age and the fact that he wants to look back at younger times when he doesn't have to quite realise his own mortality. As they had been to begin with, you've got the alliterative been to begin, which suggests that there are memories of days spent haymaking triggered and recalls his fondness of them. Sweated through, so again, it suggests intense labour, but it also suggests a feeling close to perfection. There's a happiness in intense labour, as shown through the nearly rewarded enough. The idea that such hard work brings satisfaction, that there need be no other reward. Then we've got giddied up race of a tractor. This is animated by the feverish hurry before nightfall halts the process. And this represents death at the end of the day. That's a metaphor or a euphemism for death. The last lap that we read about suggests the final day and the blood circulating in the body, doing one last lap. We can see that this is a metaphor for a reminder of the past and the past tradition. Giddied up, that's something you said, a horse. So it suggests or evokes traditional horse-led farming, which has been replaced by the tractor. So the two are merged. Giddied up race of a tractor. And it suggests that there is a race against darkness, death. The need to make the most of the light, which is obviously a representation of life. Light synonymous with life, darkness synonymous with death. You've got the alliterative last lapping, and again it suggests that there is a kind of frenzy to avoid nightfall, almost like how maybe a lot of us possibly have a fear of the unknown that death possibly brings. So again, reinforces that theme of mortality. Then we've got what I also remembered as wood pigeons sood at the edge of 30 gleaned acres. So this is a happy memory which becomes tainted with the realisation of the frailty of life, and this is when that realisation comes in. Wood pigeons sood at the edge. So you've got the repeated D sounds throughout, through the consonants, and then you've got the sibilant sounds as well. Sood is onomatopoeic, and it echoes the pigeon's call almost too soothingly. So there's something sinister in this, even though it seems quite perfect, the birds chirping, this idyllic scene. Sood suggests that they're deliberately trying to make you slip into a state of sleep. So it's kind of almost soporific in its effect, which becomes associated with the ebbing away of life and eventual death. The 30 gleaned acres, the 30 suggests plenitude. It's a really pastoral image evoking the landscape, creates vivid visual imagery that coincides with the oral imagery created through the wood pigeon's suing. And gleaned suggests some sort of gain, and in this case it suggests through the adjectival heavy phrase that this is bright, colourful, plentiful, and there's a kind of perfection. This landscape is depicted as idyllic. Then if we look at the last three stanzas, the verb choice in healing suggests the pleasure he derives from these rural experiences. And then we've got in a dusk El Dorado. Now, El Dorado was the name of a fictitious city abundant with gold, reflecting the rich colour of the straw and creating this perception for us that this rural environment he is describing is close to perfection. It really is picturesque. So it suggests or represents the beauty of poetic inspiration that Heaney is able to use based on this rural setting. So he looks around at this beautiful farmland with all the gold hay bales, and he's reminded of the promise and plenitude in El Dorado. There's rich colours of the golden bales suggesting perfection in harvest time and rural tradition. And then you've got mighty cylindrical bales, again adjectival heavy to suggest or evoke for us a really vivid visual image of this pastoral landscape. But mighty also connotes nature's power. Unlike us, we seem transient in comparison. Derek Hill's saying the last time he sat at our table. So you've got the explicit reference to the painter who was wheelchair bound by this stage, which is obviously very poignant because we can see that there is a sense of grief expressed here. Last time he sat at our table, connotations, I suppose, biblically of the Last Supper in a way. You've got the repeated use of harsh consonant sounds, the t, last time he sat at our table. So the repeated use of consonants to convey that this is going to be an unhappy memory. Well, it's going to end unhappily, but the entire thing is tinged with a bittersweet ambivalence. He could bear no longer to watch, so this has gone beyond the visual memory and the physical pleasures of the sounds and sights of the setting, and just like Derek Hill's incapacity and awareness of his own mortality has upset him and made him somewhat bitter, Heaney too, the stroke that he had has brought him to a deeper understanding the feelings and responses of a man who knows that, like Hill, he too is dying. Then you've got bear no longer to watch, the idea that whilst it is pleasant to look at, that for someone who's aware of their own mortality, this only brings sadness, that such a beautiful world will not be yours or within your grasp for much longer. Then we've got the sun going down. It's pathetic fallacy, and it's a euphemism for death and our own mortality. The sun going down, the end of the day, the end of life. You've got the alliterative and asking and please to be put, reinforcing Hill's insistence And we can see that this man cannot face being deprived by death of such natural beauty. And so, as not to be reminded, he asks to be moved. And we can see that Heaney feels the same things that Hill felt, this awareness that beauty is tinged with sadness rather than happiness when you know that you're going to die soon and not going to be able to admire it for much longer. Heaney seems to be at one with Hill's feelings or sentiments in describing what death deprives us of, and he seems to be against this cyclical, seasonal process where there's apprehension that our partaking in them is limited. The knowledge that the sun is going down for perhaps the last time is just simply too much for him to bear. It ends with his back to the window. Again, you've got the T sounds in to the, and the repeated W sounds with window, and this creates a melancholic tone. It ends in melancholy with this dying man who can no longer watch the sunset, in contrast to the life of the wood pigeons who are soughing amongst the golden bales. You can see that throughout this, the tone could be described as nostalgic, as sombre, as wistful, as depressed, as ambivalent, so bittersweet. That there's loads of variation in tone, but that it ends on this really sombre, melancholic, bleak tone. In terms of structure, there are 8 tercets, so 8 3-line stanzas of free verse. 6 of them are associated with haymaking, and 2 of them are associated with the deeper associations. So first 6 and then the final 2, the deeper associations of what the haymaking really means. This idea that the repetitive cyclical nature of life year after year in the forming calendar will not always be yours, that you will not always have life and repetition and this cycle, that the cycle ends. So hopefully that was helpful, and hopefully it will help you in your examinations. Remember that all of these videos are purely an analysis of that one poem, that you also need to master the skill of comparing and contrasting.